Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. And hello again. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be one of your hosts for today's show. We've got a bit of hosting variety for you today. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But this is episode 288 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, titled Habs Mailbag, questions about Reinbacher, Caulfield, Jackeye, Matheson. We're going to cover them all and more. And that, when I say we, I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the editor-in-chief and founder and president of Rocket Sports and the site editor for the Hockey News' Montreal Canadiens team site. That's thn.com/Montreal. He's the one and only Rick Stevens. How are you doing today?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you're here in the hosting chair, and I'm happy that our listeners are joining us today because, as you said, it's a huge show. There's lots to cover. We've got the entire crew in today.
4 hosts today.
Four hosts today. Well, listen, there was really big news this week. 2 major stories that we're covering, and we're tackling all the questions sent to us by our loyal listeners.
That's right. It's going to be pretty exciting. I'm here with Rick for right now. Michael's going to join Rick in a little bit. Nathan's going to pop in later on in the show. It's going to be a really fun Rocket Sports team effort on Canadiens Connection today. It's going to be quite a bit of fun. And so, as Rick said, there is some really big news happening around the Canadiens this week. We're going to get you caught up with all of those things. Some of it's injury related, some of it's personnel changes, some of it's roster changes. Lots to talk about in the prospect report today. Some really fun and fascinating audio clips to bring you from some players and coaches this week. And then in the second segment, Rick and Michael are going to tackle the spring Rocket Sports mailbag. Starting, as the regular season is winding down and people are starting to think about what next year's team is going to look like, there's a lot of questions that come out of that. So those two are going to reach into the Rocket Sports mailbag and answer a lot of questions that I think a lot of you are probably also mulling over. And so lots of fun kind of analysis and debate and opinions in that segment. And then finally, in our third segment, Rick and Michael and Nathan are going to get you caught up on everything happening as far as our Montreal Canadiens and Laval Rocket content here at Rocket Sports across all of our platforms. There's a lot of things that it was a busy week for everybody, particularly with the Canadiens out on the West Coast this week. Fans maybe not as tuned in to what happened game to game and so forth because of the late nights if you're on the East Coast. So lots of things to catch you up on. A great question of the week coming up that you're not going to want to miss. And of course, there's always some very fun viewer and listener comments that we're going to get to. Maybe one of them is yours. Mm-hmm. So should be a very good show today. I'm very excited to be here for it. So what's happened since the last time the Canadiens Connection folks all got together, where there have been 3 games. As I said, these have been late night games this week if you're on the East Coast or in the Atlantic time zone. Starting with Montreal's visit to Calgary last week, that was a little disappointing with a 5-2 victory for the Flames in that one.
Yeah, it was. Well, there was a number of things going on in that game. The Canadiens' penalty kill has been very good of late, and you might have expected the Calgary power play not good, 31st in the league, but somehow their power play, the Calgary power play, came alive, scored twice, and Dustin Wolf, young goaltender for the Flames, made 36 saves. Positives for the Canadiens in this game was that Cole Caulfield scored, ending his 12-game scoring drought. But the Canadiens just couldn't put it together, and this was the first game of Trevor Letowski behind the bench as the interim head coach. And we'll get to that in a minute, but the big event of the week kind of overshadowed this game.
Absolutely. So then they moved on to Edmonton. This one, I think, was a little closer than people might have anticipated. The Oilers have been pretty hot this second half of the season, and Montreal kept this one close and even forced overtime.
Interim head coach Trevor Letowski said this was one of the Canadiens' best games of the year. The players agreed. They all felt very good about their game. Nick Suzuki got his 27th goal of the season. That's a career high for Suzuki. And the Canadiens pushed the Oilers, the mighty Oilers, to overtime. And unfortunately, it was unfortunate penalty by Yoel Armia, double minor for high sticking. It was the right call, but his stick kind of got moved by Evander Kane, caught Adam Henrique, and it was on the power play in overtime. Leon Draisaitl, one-timer, and the Oilers had to win.
And then finally, they headed off to Vancouver, which was probably the biggest letdown this matchup, the 4-3 loss to the Canucks on Thursday.
Yeah, as well as they played in Edmonton, they weren't really in this game in Vancouver. The Canucks just smothered the Canadiens all over the ice. Vancouver got up to a 2-0 win. And the Canadiens could not generate any offense whatsoever. They had an opportunity in the second period when they had a number of power plays, but the power play was pretty inept. This was a real disappointment. The only positive in this game, I would say, was Caden Gooley played exceptionally well.
Yes, and we're going to hear from Trevor Letowski about that point exactly here in just a little bit. Of course, that leaves the Canadiens with 62 points right now, 26th in the NHL with a 25-32-12 record. Now, their strength of schedule going ahead, they have 13 games left on the calendar, but their strength of schedule leaves them at third in terms of that. So kind of projecting around a 74-point season, Rick, which is got them their chances at winning the NHL draft lottery, could happen, right?
6.5%. So where are the Canadiens, are they going to finish about where we expected them to? Some of us, and we're going to take a look at that in our when we review our bold predictions for the season in a few weeks. But yes, now we start to pay attention to the final standings, where they're going to end up, and their percentage for the draft, because that's the most positive thing that can come out of the season, as well as the progression of some of the individual players. Absolutely.
So as we have mentioned, don't forget, all of our team here at Rocket Sports, we are the sole contributors for the Hockey News' Montreal Canadiens team site. And so you're going to want to go to thn.com/Montreal, bookmark that, check it every day for game previews and game recaps for the Montreal Canadiens. There will be game recaps for the Laval Rocket. There will be feature stories about prospects and plays and things happening in Montreal. You don't want to miss any of it. And I should also, before we move on to kind of the meat and potatoes of the news for this episode, remind everyone that this is an interactive podcast. And if you have a question, a comment, something you'd like to say, feedback, whatever it is, you can text us at any time through the Rocket Sports text line. That's 5853-ROCKET. Also be sure, if you want to, you can also throw us a message on Twitter, Facebook, on Instagram. You can follow us at Habs Connection on those platforms. And of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this podcast at CanadiensConnection.fm. Rick had alluded to this a little bit in the opening minutes of the show. The first big story of the two gigantic stories out of Montreal this week was Martin St. Louis' sudden departure from the team after the team already found itself on the West Coast, having to leave suddenly from Calgary and head back home to attend to family matters. We heard David Savard mention to RDS, I believe, during the first intermission during that Calgary game that had something to do with Marty's son. So, of course, we are wishing him and the family well, whatever is going on. And that meant, as Rick mentioned, Trevor Letowski immediately inserted into the interim head coaching position. And after the game in Calgary, despite the loss, Letowski had some positive things to say about how the team in general reacted and pulled together in light of the news.
I mean, it's there's a lot of care in that room, and we talked a little bit about how our culture is growing and how much, as a staff, we're proud of the team, how much they care about each other, and I think they showed it when, we went through this over the last 24 hours, how much they really care about Marty and everybody. And
Trevor Letowski stepped in very difficult circumstances. It was a week ago Friday that Marty left the team to attend to his family. The coaching staff knew on the Friday night. It wasn't until game day that Saturday against Calgary that the players found out. But Letowski says he was very proud about the way the culture of the team is growing and the way that they expressed they cared about each other, they care about Marty, and that's evidence to him that the players are growing and that the leadership is growing. Trevor also went on to say that he's talking to Marty St. Louis on a regular basis. He said it's not necessarily long conversations. It isn't as if Marty is making the decisions, and that he has left to the coaching staff. Trevor said that Marty trusts the staff, and his quote was, "He lets us do our thing." But Marty checks in every day and asks. Trevor said he's curious. What was the messaging today? Mm-hmm. What changes did you make? He's not directing the staff. He's leaving it up to them, very respectful to his assistants. And for now, they're the ones who are carrying the load.
So you mentioned that happened a week ago Friday, Marty heading back home to take care of family matters. But that day, a week ago Friday, was also the day that the other big story of the week started to form, because a week ago Friday was the day that David Reinbacher's Swiss team, Cloten, officially was not going to move on into any more relegation play or anything like that in the Swiss National League. And so that meant the wheels were put into motion to bring David Reinbacher finally over to North America. And sure enough, on, I believe it was Monday, it was announced that he had been assigned to the Laval Rocket. So a bit of a little whirlwind weekend for David Reinbacher. Things wrap up in Switzerland, and by Monday, he finds himself in North America.
Yeah, and he found himself last week surrounded by a number, certainly more than the usual contingent
in Laval.
In Laval, and full of questions, as the media can be expected, and maybe a little of David Reinbacher dealt with that at development camp, rookie camp, so he probably knew what to expect. But he was a little sensitive, I thought, about when asked about his season, when asked about his year in Cloten, and something that he didn't want to talk about. And I think it was Herb Zurkowski who said, do you think you would have developed more had you stayed in North America? And David said, I don't know. I didn't play here. Can you show me where I can look up the stats to say I would have been better if I had stayed in North America?
Little testy.
Yeah, a little sarcastic there. And so I think it's clear that he's happy to be with Laval.
Definitely.
And wants to put the season he just finished well behind him.
And he's done that. He's had his debut game with Laval in the AHL, and we're going to give you all the details about that coming up shortly in our prospect report. Speaking of prospects, however, some bad news coming out of the Canadiens then this week, with the Canadiens having to announce that Joshua Waugh is going to be out of commission for about 4 to 6 weeks due to an upper body injury, most likely due to that shot block that he had. Was that in the Edmonton game?
In the Edmonton game,
Yeah.
It was Evan Bouchard. His right hand seemed to be affected, and a fracture. The Canadians aren't saying what it is, but that would kind of line up with the 4 to 6 weeks that he'll be out with this injury. And we certainly don't want to second guess decisions that were made, but on the podcast we've been saying why did Joshua Waugh head out on the Western road trip when he could have been sent to Laval to help them with their playoff push. And of course it was Joshua Waugh and Jaden Struble who were sent down on trade deadline day to Laval. Immediately recalled, just a paper transaction to make them both eligible. And now it appears that Laval's going to have to. They're going to have to win a series or two before they're going to see Joshua Waugh.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this week we might not have winners and losers, but we do have a winner to talk about. So let's get to that.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
We're just full of positivity this week. So
Sure.
We're not bringing you a loser this week, but there is a winner that, Rick, you feel that we really need to give kind of a stick tap to.
I really do. It's been a difficult season for Jake Allen, part of the 3 goalie rotation. He was terrific in October. He played extremely well. And then once they got into that 3 goalie rotation where his starts were not regular, where in practice he didn't have his own net, very difficult for a veteran goaltender to adapt to that situation. He struggled. And I mean, none of the 3 Montreal goaltenders has really distinguished themselves this season. But Jake Allen got a new opportunity, traded to the New Jersey Devils. And since he's been in New Jersey, he's had 4 starts. He's got a record of 3-1, goals against of 1.76, and a save percentage of .946. Believe it or not, unbelievable. And so who was he? Who were the opponents for the Devils? Well, none other than Winnipeg, Vegas, Dallas. Those are tough opponents, and Pittsburgh. And Jake Allen has been a godsend for the Devils, who their goaltending has been struggling badly all season long. So he has stabilized the Devils. Whether they make the playoffs or not, they're still in the hunt. But Jake Allen has. You can see the Devils fans are praising Jake Allen. Jake Allen's a good guy, so we just want to, as you said, give him a stick tap and make him our winner of the week.
And according to morning skate reports on Saturday, it looks like the Devils are going to keep riding the hot hand. It looks like he's going to get the start on Saturday night as well. So
why not?
Yeah, why not? Exactly. All right, so we mentioned that there is a lot to talk about in terms of the Habs prospects, which is a very good thing for Habs fans, quite honestly. So let's not waste another moment. Let's get to this week's Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So, of course, each week on the Habs Prospect Report, we highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect. And this week in particular, we are shining a spotlight on someone playing in the Finnish Liga, playing for Kalpa, and that is forward Oliver Kapanen.
Oliver Kapanen was taken by the Canadiens back in 2021 in the second round, 64th overall. That makes him 20 years old, as you said, playing for Kalpa, and he's had a reasonably good season. 14 goals, 20 assists, 34 points in 51 games. Now, Kalpa's into the playoffs, and in 3 playoff games, they won their first series, and it was a best of 3. In 3 playoff games, he has 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in those 3 playoff games. So great start to the playoffs for Kalpa, and a great start to the playoffs for Oliver Kapanen.
Very nice. Speaking of playoffs and kind of end of the season excitement, NCAA has certainly started those kinds of rumblings as some of the conference competitions begin. And that means that some of the award names of finalists and so forth are starting to come out. First, though, Canadiens prospect Luke Tuck in Hockey East. Well, he was the player of the week for Hockey East this past week.
Yeah, and that was for the previous week that the Boston Terriers had a 4-2 quarterfinal win over Northeastern. A week ago Saturday, Luke Tuck scored his 9th goal of the season, got an assist as well. And that set him up with, for the season, 9 goals, 18 assists, which is a career best, 27 points, and a plus 16 rating. He's been very good, a big body player. The Canadiens are keeping an eye on him. Jeff Gordon was there watching him and his teammate Lane Hudson as well. But congratulations to Luke Tuck, Hockey East Player of the Week.
Well, speaking of Lane Hudson, he has been named as one of the 10 guys who are the finalists for the Hobey Baker Award this year.
And he's had a terrific season. There are 10 finalists at this point. Some of the names you'll recognize: Macklin Celebrini, Cutter Gauthier, Will Smith, and of course Lane Hudson. They will pare that down to the hat trick, the Hobey hat trick. That's the 3 finalists. They'll be announced on the 4th of April, and then the award itself. We remember who's won that award in the past. One Cole Caulfield, but that will be announced on April 12th during the Frozen Four, and the Frozen Four tournament is going to be held in St. Paul, Minnesota this season.
That should be well attended
Yeah.
in the state of hockey. And before we leave the NCAA, let's talk a moment about goaltender Jacob Fowler. He has been nominated for the Mike Richter Award.
Yeah, that is for the Mike Richter Award is for the NCAA Goalie of the Year, and Jacob Fowler is one of 3 finalists for that award. He's going against Kyle McLennan from Wisconsin and Caden Maberko from Colorado College. Fowler, we remember it's his freshman season. He has a record of 27-5-1, a 223 goals against average, and a 923 save percentage. And it's going to be interesting because, of course, for Boston College, they will be facing the Boston University Terriers, who we just spoke about, and Lane Hudson in the Hockey East title game on Saturday night.
That is pretty exciting stuff. Love it. All right, let's switch gears to the Laval Rocket, because we know you want to hear not only how Laval's doing on their playoff push, but more importantly, David Reinbacher joining the team this week and making his debut. He began practicing with the Rocket on Tuesday, and of course, then traveled with them on Thursday to kick off this next portion of their road trip that they are on. This is their last 3 in 3 of the season, where they will play 3 games in the course of 3 days, Friday night, Saturday night, and on Sunday afternoon. All of that, of course, though, coming on the heels of last Sunday's game in Toronto playing the Marlies, one of the 2 teams that they're really battling with to get that last playoff spot. And Laval got absolutely torched by the Marlies last Sunday, losing 7-1. It was an absolutely embarrassing effort by Laval last Sunday.
Especially going against the Marlies, who, as you said, one of the teams that they're in a battle with for a playoff spot.
Absolutely. So then they had, of course, as I said, David Reinbacher joined the team. They practiced back in Laval for a few days this week before they hit the road again for a Friday night game against the Belleville Senators in Belleville. Belleville is another team right there with Toronto that Laval is battling with. So this was this game had big implications for both teams. And boy, what a bounce back after that terrible game on Sunday in a building that, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of success in. Laval historically does not perform well at CAA Arena in Belleville, but they forced overtime, won the game in overtime 3-2. The game-tying goal by none other than David Reinbacher, first AHL goal in his first AHL game, and the game winner by Logan Mailloux.
And with that game winner, Logan Mailloux set a Rocket record for most goals by a defenseman. With the win, Jakob Dobas set a record for the most goaltending wins by a Rocket goaltender, edging out Caden Primo in that category. So a terrific game. Belleville, I think, kind of were counting their points already in the third period when Laval started mounting the comeback. But great game for Mailloux, for Dobas, and, of course, for David Reinbacher.
Reinbacher's goal was pretty nice.
It was.
Reinbacher's goal was pretty nice. So he, as I said, scored the game-tying goal, helped his team get to overtime so that they could get a win, which was desperately needed after last week. So after the game, he did speak to the media, and he was actually pretty humble and gracious with his teammates when asked about scoring his first AHL goal, which happened to be a pretty big game-tying goal in his debut.
I mean, I kept it really simple, and all my teammates to help me. They were so good on the ice. They communicated really well. So it was an easy night for me to play first game a little bit easier. I'm really thankful for all the teammates here. Always happy to score, but the best feeling is to win with the team and get those really important points for the playoff rush.
Yeah, he said he was pretty nervous, but once he got on the ice, that you heard him say his teammates helped him out. They were, his defense partners were talking to him, and in that game, you can speak to this, that William Trudeau went out with an injury, so
in the first period,
Laval was down to 5 defensemen, and that meant Reinbacher had a rotating partner.
That's right.
Through the game. So a terrific debut by David Reinbacher.
Absolutely. He, of course, then also spoke about the immediate differences that he noticed in the North American game compared to playing in Europe, and is already starting to really kind of process all of that new information in terms of what he needs to do looking forward.
I mean, it's more bringing the puck deep and winning the battles in the corner. Back home, it's more skill, more speed. You go around the net, you try to create some plays, but here's easy, simple plays, chip out, go after the puck. I mean, I always want to play. I love to play, especially as a young kid. When you're coming into this league, you take every chance to play, to show up and get your spot for next season.
He sounds pretty excited,
He's pretty excited. He's pretty excited. So that win, now here's the thing. By going to overtime, Belleville got a point, which doesn't help Laval. Toronto also won on Friday night, And that game was in a shootout. So Toronto still extended their lead as well. So Laval's 28-25, 6-2 record still has them at 6th place in the North Division, which is one position outside of that final spot where they qualify for that best of 3 play-in round. Leaves them just 2 points behind Belleville for 5th place, though. And that is who they play once again on Saturday night, tonight. They're playing Belleville again. It's going to be a big rematch after last night. I think Belleville's probably going to come out and give them a bit more of a push than they did last night. Because if Belleville loses that game, Laval ties them in the standings and potentially pushes them out of a playoff spot. Big game for Laval on Saturday night. And then they travel overnight to Toronto, where Sunday afternoon they will have a rematch from that god-awful game they played last week against the Marlies, who, again, are still also fighting to maintain that spot. They are rematching on Sunday afternoon, and that will be, of course, also a fatiguing game for Laval, playing their 3rd game in 3 days. The road trip then wraps up on Wednesday when they go and visit Utica, who is currently trailing Laval by just 3 points, but they have 2 games in hand on Laval. So another crucial game. Every single game for Laval right now is just an absolute must win. And then on Friday next week, Laval finally returns home. It'll be David Reinbacher's home debut at Place Belle. Oh, and it's the Belleville Senators, who they'll be playing again, but this time in Laval, which will be another rematch with another battle for the same spots that they've got this weekend. So,
so what you're saying, what you're saying is that we as Canadiens fans, as Laval fans, we have to keep track of Laval, of course, but
yes,
also the Belleville Senators, the Toronto Marlies, and the Utica Comets. Yes. So how in the world can a fan be expected to keep up on all of this action this week?
Gee, I just don't know, other than the shameless self-promotion of perhaps you should go over to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/allhabs. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, because every Tuesday I publish a video called Rocket Hockey Report, where I give you all of the details of every game the Rocket played the week prior. I pick out the top prospects who performed well for Laval in that week. And I also give you what the standings look like, what the stakes are for the Rocket, and a preview of the week ahead. So you're going to want to check that out every Tuesday, the Rocket Hockey Report over on our YouTube channel. As far as the ECHL affiliate, the Trois-Rivières Lions, they've just had a real struggle of a season. They did manage to win one game this week, a 5-4, very close game. But aside from that, I take that back. They won 2 of their 3 games this week. So that's actually an improvement for them, just dropping one game. But they are still 5th place in the North Division with a 26-26, 5-3 record.
And given their struggles this season, and you mentioned 5th place in the North, the top 4 teams make the playoffs. So as such, they're 1 place out of the playoffs. They still have a possibility of making the playoffs, and that would be nice given the rough season they've had.
If perhaps it's the QMJHL that you like to keep tabs on, well, you're in luck. Our team also, Rick is also the site editor for the Hockey News' QMJHL website. You can find that at thn.com/QMJHL. And as he has been doing for the past few weeks, our colleague Mike Raschel here at Rocket Sports Media has been doing a series on Memorial Cup contenders, and I believe just today he's got a brand new, fresh article out.
Yeah, it's about the Prince George Cougars, arguably the best team in the CHL. Didn't you say the site was about the Q? Why in the world would you be talking about a WHL team? Well, Mike has gone through and prepared this Memorial Cup contender series. That is all of if you're a fan of the Q, you might want to know who the representative of the QMJHL will be facing when they get to the Memorial Cup. So Mike covered the OHL in the series over the past few weeks, and now has moved to the WHL. and the Prince George Cougars are first up. And within the next couple of weeks, he's going to get to the queue as well.
Well, so don't forget, if you want to find all of our written content about Canadiens prospects and the Montreal Canadiens in general, you want to head to thn.com/Montreal. And if you want English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, then head over to thn.com/QMJHL. As we've mentioned a couple of times, the two big stories of this week were Trevor Letowski taking over as the Canadiens' interim head coach and David Reinbacher, last year's 5th overall draft pick, joining the Laval Rocket this week. So we've got a couple of quotes from some members in and around the organization regarding a couple of those things. First of all, Rick, when we talked about the games that the Canadiens played at last week at the top of the show, you mentioned that the game in Edmonton was or Vancouver, I should say, was.
I misspoke. I said that it was Caden Gooley that played well in Vancouver. It was actually
Right.
the Edmonton game.
Yes.
He being in his hometown, more or less,
That's right.
coming from Sherwood Park. So my mistake earlier. Sorry to mislead you there.
That's all right.
It was a really terrific game for Caden Gooley in Edmonton.
And the point is that Trevor Letowski thought it was as well. He had some glowing remarks about Caden Gooley after the game.
Yeah, I thought Gooley was very good tonight. I mean, it's probably an exciting game for him to play, just with all the history he has in this building, in this city. And he answered the bell tonight. He was sharp from the start. His compete level was through the roof, and obviously scores the big goal for us as well. So it's a big night for a young player.
And why are we playing that? Well, one, to recognize Gooley, his growth, the fact that he is taking over. And we saw in Vancouver that Trevor Letowski had something we've been talking about, separating Caden Gooley from Mike Matheson. But Trevor Letowski is really plugged into the players and was very complimentary to Caden Gooley for his effort in Edmonton.
Absolutely. Good on Caden Gooley. Also, with Reinbacher coming over, naturally, some of the questions about, the expectations for Reinbacher were posed to some of the Canadiens' younger prospects, like Juraj Slafkovsky. And he actually did have some things to say, interesting to me, not just about Reinbacher, but also about the AHL as well, which I find a little bit curious because Juraj Slafkovsky has never played in the AHL, but I digress. But here's what the wise young Juraj Slafkovsky had to say about that.
I mean, for sure, he'll need to get used to playing on a smaller ice. He'll probably have less time, and it's for sure more physical than back in Europe. But I feel like he can definitely make the change, and it's just a matter of few games till you get used to it. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a skilled guy. Like, we have great coaches down there too that will try to help him every day. And yeah, it's more like he's the player already. He just needs to get used to the ice, used to the game style and everything, because it's obviously different than playing in Swiss. I feel like you have more time there, and it's more like more skilled. Not like AHL. It's more meatheads just trying to take her head off. But yeah.
So that's
exactly what I mean.
Juraj Slafkovsky's commentary on the AHL, that it's meatheads trying to take your head off. And as you correctly said, he has not played in the AHL. As Patrick Williams reminds us, the second best hockey league in the entire world. Mm-hmm. I think, Juraj Slafkovsky, when he speaks to the media, his way of being a bit disarming is to be silly, and he likes to get laughs from the media. He accomplished his goal here. It's a bit of an immature approach, and that's something that I expect and I hope he'll grow out of. But I think the important parts that he said there is that the Swiss League is skilled. You have a lot more time to make plays, and that David Reinbacher is going to have to get used to the size of the ice and also the style, the game style in the AHL.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the way that he ended that clip, because it actually kind of takes away from how good the rest of his quote was.
That's right.
Talking about Reinbacher, his abilities and the challenges that he knows. If there's one thing that your eye can speak to, it's the differences between the European game and the North American game, just not the AHL game. And so that's the portion of his quote that I like to focus on instead.
For sure.
Finally, in this segment, before we get to the Habs mailbag, which I can't wait to hear what our listeners had for you guys this week. But the big general hockey news this week was, of course, the GM meetings taking place annually every March down in Palm Beach, Florida. Well, gee, I'm just going to go ahead and do another shameless self-promotion here. I'm going to just go back, return to that subject of our YouTube channel. Not only on Tuesdays do you get my Rocket Hockey report, but then every Thursday, I have a Habs Hockey report that comes out every Thursday, touching on the hottest topics surrounding the Montreal Canadiens and or the NHL in general. This past week, I actually had a video specifically about this topic, about my 6 highlights that I took away from what came out of the GM meetings this week. So if you missed that, I will invite you to go to youtube.com/allhabs and check that out. You can just click on the videos tab and you will see that is the most recently uploaded video. Giving you just a bit of a sneak peek of some of the things that came out. Nothing mind-blowing. Colin Campbell even said, the league's director of hockey operations said, there's really nothing super exciting here. And I have to agree with him, but there are some interesting things. I think. Was
he speaking about himself or when?
No.
Talking
about the changes that have been proposed by the GMs. I think the most significant thing is that with all of the hubbub surrounding what they were going to do to change overtime, the answer is nothing. After causing that big stir about it in September, that they were gonna, that they don't like, the GMs were feeling that maybe, teams continually cycling back into their own end to regroup and over and over and over again was slowing down the pace of the overtime, making it less dynamic, making it less exciting. Well, they've decided that they were essentially wrong. That yes, that happens, but then things get back underway again, and so they're not touching overtime right now. It's going to stay the same. The rest of the things in terms of rule changes that will still have to go through an approval process over the summer with the committee and the board of governors. So nothing set in stone yet, but it's looking like there might be some emphasis placed on enforcing some penalties regarding players who are waiting to come onto the ice, who throw their legs over the boards, waiting to come on. There's a safety issue that they want to make sure that's actually a penalty if they do that. So they're going to start enforcing that more. There's going to be some focus on the goaltenders in terms of intentionally dislodging the net, in terms of warm-up periods permitted for replacement goaltenders if they come in mid-game.
Now, the knocking the net off its pegs, is that going to be called the Jakub Dobes rule or not?
I'm the one that brought this to your attention this season, that Jakub Dobes, God love the kid, but I have watched every game that he's played this year, and he has an uncanny ability to knock the net off sometimes more than once a game in almost every game. And when his
defenseman has fallen down or when he's...
I can't say that he's always doing it intentionally, but it happens an awful lot for Jakub Dobes.
But listen, if it hasn't been a penalty up till now...
Well, it might be soon if they determine, well, at least in the NHL. If they determine that the goaltender, right now they can penalize a skater for it. I don't know why up until now you can't penalize a goaltender for it, but that's something that they're looking at, and they're looking at expanding the ability of the coach's challenge to a couple of new areas as well, in terms of high sticking minors and in terms of puck over the glass, delay of game. So if you want all of the ins and outs and the details about those kinds of things, then I'm going to say that you need to go check out my video on YouTube. YouTube.com/allhabs.
Right.
All right. So we're going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Coming up next, Michael Spinella is going to hop into the studio with Rick, and the two of them are going to lead you through a tremendous second segment with the Rocket Sports Spring Mailbag. So much fun. And then later in the show, I'll actually be back with Rick so that we can talk a little bit about some comments from you, our listeners and viewers, later in the third segment, along with Nathan and Michael. So stay with us. All of that's coming up next. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Just a reminder here to make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss a single episode. And it's springtime, Rick. So
it is.
Habs fans probably looking more towards the draft as opposed to the playoffs at this point. Mm-hmm. You know, given where they are in the standings, I think that's fair, right?
I think it's fair. And why not look forward rather than looking back? Look forward with hope.
Yeah, lots of positives coming up, and we do see that in a lot of our listeners' comments and messages to us. So with that kind of a changing of the season here, let's open up that Rocket Sports mailbag. We're always happy to hear from all of our Canadiens Connections listeners.
Yeah, they're happy.
I was not expecting that to come in, so appreciate the sound effect. But yeah, tons of questions coming in about Caulfield, Arbor Jack guy, Marty St. Louis, Matheson even makes an appearance in there. And looking forward to next season's edition of the Montreal Canadiens. I think there are a lot of positives along the way, but we learned quite a bit this season. And of course, we still have plenty of questions along the way. So let's dig into this mailbag here. And just a little note, we do lightly edit these just for clarity when we read these out on the podcast. And you're ready to get going with this?
Yeah, I'm excited.
So this first one, I think we'll just say a little bit of disappointment towards Cole Caulfield. This message comes from Graham in Canada, Ontario, so about 20 minutes away from where I grew up, actually.
Nice.
And that's home of the Canadian Tire Center, not in Ottawa, but in Canada. What Graham has to say is, love your show. I remember when the question was, will Caulfield score 50? Now we're being told that we should be happy with 25 this year because he is a more complete player. Of course, more completes in quotes there. If Cole Caulfield is not going to be a sniper, why not trade him now? DeBrincat is supposed to be his comparable, and he's on his third team already. So that's from Graham in Canada. And honestly, I think about that a lot. I think about the fact that that was a question that we asked on this podcast earlier this season. And I also remember making the remark that Cole Caulfield might be the best 40-goal scorer that has never actually scored 40 goals, as of yet anyway. More complete, I think in quotes, that's fair. He's getting more assists. That's kind of helped out his overall points. But at the same time, I don't think you're throwing him out on the penalty kill or to defend a lead. So I don't know that he's more complete in that aspect. This season, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think this is his first full NHL season. The last 2 years, 67 games, 46 games. He's a young player. He's still got a lot to go. I think we've yet to see him at his best. Alex DeBrincat is comparable. I liked Alex DeBrincat at one point when he was scoring 40 goals. He's a very streaky player, though. Sometimes he's unstoppable, but he goes through long stretches where he cannot do anything. So my point with Cole Caulfield is I don't think it's time to panic yet. I think disappointing season, yes, but let's not assume that Cole Caulfield has peaked at this point. What do you think?
That's a great answer. A very complex question, a good question. We thank Graham for that. So the positives, I guess, Cole Caulfield will set his career high for points. As you said, assists he's racked up the assists this year. Last season, 26 goals in 46 games. And folks were saying, well, that means, and you do the math, prorate it, and he was going to be a 45-goal scorer or more this season. And it hasn't quite worked out that way. Mentioning Alex DeBrincat, and Alex DeBrincat, as you said, had a couple of 40-goal seasons when he was with Chicago. He's kind of averaging out now to a 25-goal per season kind of player. But are they the same? And are the same reasons at the root of Cole Caulfield's issues? Now, there's an obvious age difference. DeBrincat's 26, Cole Caulfield's 23. Is he on that same kind of trajectory? I think you want to be patient. I don't think you'd want to, particularly with the Canadiens and their struggle to score goals. You wouldn't necessarily want to pull the trigger on a Cole Caulfield trade right now. What's happening? What's happened to Cole Caulfield this season? His shooting percentage is way down. He's not scoring goals. I think on the broadcast the other night, it said that it was the first slap shot, first time he had scored a goal on a slap shot. It was a one-timer. It was when he broke his 12-game goalless drought. And I don't know if that's absolutely true or not, but he's not scoring as much on the power play. He's not scoring with a one-timer. And why? And yet he's got he's in the top 10 for shots on goal this year. It's 250 some odd shots per year. So what's going on? Well, I think I direct you to episode 274 of the Canadiens Connection podcast. It was out middle of December 16th, and the title is "What's Wrong with Cole Caulfield?" Now, why did we do that podcast? Well, at that time, he had 7 goals in 29 games. And it was a struggle. And that episode, we had our medical consultant, Dr. Stephen Morris, on. And I had found a study about shoulder surgeries and 29 NHL players who had gone through similar surgery, not the exact surgery that Cole Caulfield had, and the effect on their baseline production. And that study said that it was about an 18-month period before the player returned to Dr. Morris Stephen took us through that and explained why that could be happening. What I've noticed is that, Cole Caulfield, his calling card has been pinpoint accuracy. He just hasn't had that this season. He can't put the puck where he wants to. And that's affected his goal production. And that could be because of this whole Letowski surgery that he had. And the socket was all worn out and it kept dislocating and they've had to build that up. And does he have the same strength? Does he have the same control? I think, this question kind of prompts me to reach out to Dr. Steve and maybe we'll get him on a future episode. And I should say that if you have questions of a medical nature or injury nature, send those in and we'll be glad to pass them on to the doctor when he appears on a future edition of the Canadiens Connection. But all of these things, all of these issues with recovery time, I don't think Cole Caulfield, despite the fact that he says he feels good and all of that, I don't think he's back to back to 100%. And I think that a little more patience is would be warranted. Because there's Josh Anderson had the same injury, and he said it took him 14 months or 18 months until he had the strength back. Now, okay, Josh Anderson's a bad example right now because of the way he's playing, but I think that you said patience, I say patience. We understand the reason for asking this question. But I think that I would hold off, and I sure hope that Kent Hughes does as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, great question there. Appreciate that it sounds like Graham's listening to us and also paying attention to all the games. So appreciate that question, Graham. And Rick, I feel like you didn't talk enough there, so I'll let you lead the way into the next question.
Sure. This one... This is an interesting. Well, first of all, Curtis in Pointe Claire, Quebec says, "Thanks for taking questions." Well, you're welcome. We're happy to take questions. We're happy to read them, especially when you attach your name and location. Curtis says, "You guys have talked about Marty St. Louis' lack of coaching experience and the times when it's been painfully obvious, and I agree 100%. Here's my fix. Add an experienced NHL coach to the bench. What do you think?" What do you think, Michael Spinella?
Well, I guess when we're talking about Marty St. Louis, I think it's important that we give an honest answer here, and I think we've been honest in the past. I understand that Marty's stepped away at this point in time. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to say anything personal about Marty St. Louis, but I think it's fair to critique the bench in general still as we come along the way. What I have to say here is that it was always kind of a shock that the Montreal Canadiens put someone with no coaching experience as their head coach. I know some people love Marty. I know some people maybe not so much, some people in the middle. So he's a bit of a controversial guy amongst our listeners, amongst fans. If I'm being honest, I think that at some point, if the Montreal Canadiens want to take a step forward, they need to find an experienced coach. That doesn't necessarily mean an NHL coach, someone with NHL coaching experience. It could be someone with assistant experience, AHL head coach experience, what have you. Just coaching experience in general, I think, would really benefit the team. At this point, I think Marty has made his mark on some players. I think he's been good for some players as the young guys. I think he's been good at getting the team ready for games. Very few times, in my opinion, do I think the Montreal Canadiens have shown up and lost because they've not looked ready or they've looked asleep. In most cases, at least, I think that when they do lose, it's just clear that there's a lack of talent and they're just not to par with other of those, like some of those other heavy hitters like the Carolina Hurricanes. So at some point, when they're ready to make a next step, it's time to bring in someone with experience. And unfortunately for Marty, I know that he's not someone that preaches systems per se, but I think a lot of these young players are going to want to learn systems if they want to be successful.
Now, I should say that this was a very good question from Curtis. We got a lot of questions about Marty's absence from the team. I think it's fair to say that everybody knows that he's stepped away from the team for family issues, and we don't need to go any further than that. We're going to respect his privacy, and we're not going to be pounding the pavement to unearth anything. We're going to have respect. But I think maybe this question's prompted by the fact that many Habs fans are getting to know Trevor Letowski a little bit more, and how that bench works presently. And I don't know if I'm reading into this or not, but I think Curtis is my interpretation of what Curtis is saying is add an experienced coach to the current membership, leave everybody alone. And I know that there has been suggestions out there that Marty's just here, he's good with the young guys, and he'll make way for someone. And that's one model, but it seems to be, again, I may be reading this wrong, but that if you have all of these the coaching staff without NHL experience, why don't you just plunk somebody as an associate coach there to help give advice, to bring that wisdom? And if that's what Curtis is asking, then I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. I think Marty would think it's a terrible idea. I think that Marty, one of the reasons that he has a group with a lot of that are inexperienced is that, you know, he has no challenge. There's no one there to challenge his ideas or to tell him what to do, or he's the boss. He runs his team and his bench and his philosophy as he thinks is best. And he was asked, and I don't know how long ago this was, he was asked about adding a skills coach or adding additional personnel to the bench. And his quote was, I have to respect their hockey mind. I respect the hockey minds of my assistants. And he probably does respect the hockey minds of those assistants. But he also respects the fact that they're not any threat to him. They're not going to fire Marty and make Alex Burrows head coach. There's just zero chance of that happening. And it's an interesting philosophy. I remember last week when it was the Canadiens were against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and it gave the media the opportunity to say, "Hey, you briefly were here as kind of itinerant skills coach, came in once a month and did skills. Did you learn a lot about NHL coaching from being part of an NHL organization and John Tortorella bringing you in, and did you learn from that wisdom?" And he said, "No, I learned more as from my role in minor hockey. Hockey's hockey, and that's where I learned to be head coach, which I thought was an odd answer. But it's the way he coaches, and I think people kind of underestimated what Trevor Letowski does. Trevor Letowski is Marty St. Louis', if you use a Star Trek analogy, number one. Letowski does everything. He has run the bench, even when Marty's there, changes lines, all of that stuff at the beginning, and still has input now, and that's according to Suzuki. And Marty uses him as kind of an intermediary where if Robidas has some issues about the penalty kill, he'll go to Letowski, they'll hash it out, and then they bring it to Marty with kind of a solution in hand. Same thing for Alex Burrows about the power play. And it's Marty. Marty he's the guy who sells it to the players, who sells the philosophy, who sells the approach to the players. That's where his strength is. Trevor Letowski, up until now has been in the shadows, but don't underestimate his importance to that bench. So getting back to, that's a long-winded answer, and I'm sorry. Curtis, I think that's a great answer, a great solution. Bring some experience in, and let that person, along with Letowski, be an associate coach to add some experience and wisdom and all of that. I just don't think Marty will ever go for it because he'll feel threatened by a coach who has a lot of experience, in my opinion.
Wait, so your solution is fire Burrows and replace him?
Well, that could have been years ago, but.
Anyways, one way to interpret, I guess. But lots of other great questions to get to. And, of course, this next one is in regards to taking a giant leap next season. So on last week's episode, we asked all of our listeners if they felt like the Montreal Canadiens would be a playoff team next season. And Craig from Richmond, BC chimed in to answer that, but we have some comments for it. What Craig has to say is, are the Habs a playoff team next season? A definite maybe. I'm leaning towards yes because I heard Mike Matheson say that Habs are just a bunch of one-goal games away from being Vancouver next year. And yeah, it's interesting. I think that Montreal maybe is a little bit behind where Vancouver is, but here's kind of how I ration this whole one-goal game thing, and maybe I'm focusing too much on that aspect, but definitely went down a rabbit hole here. I tried to count out the amount of one-goal losses by the Montreal Canadiens. We ended up with possibly some human error here because this was by hand, and the 20-23 range for one-goal losses. The more official stat out there would be the loser points. I think that might be a little bit more reliable. They have 12 loser points on the season. The Columbus Blue Jackets also have 12 loser points on the season and 18 one-goal losses. So I don't know if this one-goal loss thing is going to hold up. It's a bit difficult. What I can say, too, is the Montreal Canadiens currently have the worst goal differential in the Atlantic Division. They also have the least amount of goals scored. So are they going to take a giant leap? Probably not. And I think there might just be a little bit too much value being held on these one-goal losses. What do you think, Rick?
Well, last week we talked about Mike Matheson and his judgment.
Fair.
Okay, I won't blame. Yeah, there's more people than just Mike Matheson saying that that the Canadiens can make a jump next year. Are they Vancouver? Well, Vancouver this season, right at this moment, is the best team in the Western Conference, 96 points. The Montreal Canadiens, 62 points. So that's an enormous leap, I think. But for me, the most telling stat, and it's that one goal thing. Again, the Vancouver Canucks have 38 regulation wins. Because of all those loser points, the Montreal Canadiens have 15 regulation wins. That's that's a leap that's a little too far for the Canadiens to make. And I think part of it is because I really don't believe that Montreal has the same basis, the same core of talent. There's no Thatcher Demko, there's no Quinn Hughes, there's the Canadiens players are coming, but and one of the things that was interesting, Trevor Letowski said that out of all the top teams they've been playing this last week or so, this stretch, that Vancouver has two equal top lines. And that's one of the reasons he chose to split Matheson and Gooley, something I've been yelling about, and finally got done. So good on you, Trevor Letowski. But that they're really strong, and the Canadiens just aren't there yet. And I'm reminded of something now, and this is, I think this is something my minor league hockey coach said this. A lot of times it's attributed to Bob Gainey, but I think it's kind of a universal hockey saying, and that is when you lose by one goal, you're 2 goals away from winning. And that's just a fact, and that's just math.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think the other point here that you brought up is Vancouver does have a lot of very good pieces that I don't think Montreal currently has in play. To an extent, if I want to be kind of opinionated about it, I think Vancouver kind of overachieved this year. I don't think they're actually going to be that good next season. But anyways, that might not be neither here nor there. But I think that's a fair point. 2 goals away from a win. I actually hadn't heard that before. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Are you predicting a first round out for Vancouver?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, back to the Montreal Canadiens. The next question comes in from Remy in Westmount, and Rick, I'll let you read out this question.
Remy says, "Hi, Rick and Michael. To answer your question, and this is again referring to our Canadiens Connection question of the week last week. Remy says, no, the Habs are not a playoff team next season. Now, Remy has answered our question. He says, now please answer mine. You've said that Hugo, Kent Hughes, and Jeff Gordon are trying to accelerate the rebuild, but Hughes has said that they want to be patient and do things the right way. How can they do both?" Remy in Westmount, Quebec. You want to take this first?
Sure, I'll kind of set this up here. That's kind of difficult, and I have noticed that we've kind of heard and seen both sides of this. To an extent, I think when players like Doc and Newhook come available that are still young and further along, they'll jump on that, but also they're going to take their high top 10 picks like they had the past few seasons. One thing that shows me that they might be trying to accelerate here is the fact that they're hanging on to so many veterans at this point. I feel like that's pretty indicative of a team trying to maybe speed run the rebuild. But it's interesting that you did notice this is something, again, I thought about this not too long ago, so it's nice to see you put this out into words. I think that there might be a little bit of both happening here, but also Kent Hughes loves to use the media. So what do you think, Rick?
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely right. Remy, you've noticed that Kent Hughes talks out of both sides of his mouth. The GM is going to make the case to fit his situation. So when he brings in a Kirby Doc, he's going to talk about accelerating the rebuild, and when he doesn't move a veteran, he'll talk about doing things the right way or focusing on the draft or all of that. So, and what is doing the right thing the right way? Is it sitting at the bottom of the standings for, a half a dozen years and drafting in the top 5 consecutively over that period of time? And it's good to assemble draft picks, but you can't use them all. You can't sign them all. That age and development curve is going to work against you. And as I think that Kent Hughes is one of the few Mark Bergevin certainly didn't get this, that the prospects must peak all at the same time. So obviously, when Suzuki's at his peak, and if you're drafting a young guy in 2024 that's going to take a few years, maybe a goaltender, 5 years to develop, that synchronization is going to be off. Instead, there's the shortcut. There's being aggressive. There's packaging prospects or packaging draft picks to obtain young talent. So I congratulate Remy for spotting this as well. But expect that Kent Hughes is going to continue to make his case both ways. When he's slow and deliberative, and when he's aggressive.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it there. And like we've pointed out a few times along the way, and Kent Hughes has admitted, he's going to use the media as a weapon when he can. So that's just a thing that we can come to expect from a former agent.
Yeah.
The last and final question comes from Max in Gothenburg, Sweden. Lots of great hockey players come from Gothenburg, Sweden, actually. So that's a great hockey town. Thank you for reaching out, Max. And Max says, count them. Gooley, Hudson, Reinbacher, Harris, Struble, Mayu, Barron, Engstrom, Trudeau, Norlinder, Sobolev, Kanushkov. They're all young D. And that doesn't even include Matheson, Savard, and Kovacevic. You notice that I didn't mention Jack-Eye. My idea, convert Arbor to forward. You get his shot and his physicality up front. So interesting idea coming from Max. Honest, I don't completely disagree with that. I think that's pretty creative, pretty inventive. You don't normally see defensemen being converted to forward and vice versa. I think the only players that come to mind are Bufflin and Burns that have gone through that, and they kind of bounce between the two positions. I don't think that the Montreal Canadiens will do it, but I do have a compromise for you.
All right.
There will be a Jack-Eye on forward, but his first name's going to be Florian. So you got one in front, you get one in the back. I think that's a fair compromise. In terms of all these young D-men, you can't count on them all panning out. That's just something that happens when you stockpile prospects. You have a lot of good, promising players. They'll battle it out. Some will make it, some of them won't. The better ones hopefully prevail. Over the years, I mean, you got to think about how many prospects you've been excited about, and you thought, this is going to be the next best thing. But then, things happen. They don't pan out. Injuries happen. They get moved on from. In terms of Montreal Canadiens, yeah, you remember Yulson that was once a Montreal Canadien, once thought of as a pretty good draft pick, who's moved on to another team. Or how about a new guy in the Montreal area, and Colin White? This was a first-round pick that was supposed to be a number 2 center, one of the best two-way forward prospects, scored a big goal at the World Junior, and now he's on the fourth line and probably better suited for the AHL. I think in the case of Colin White, it's a combination of things. I think he just couldn't raise his level of compete. I think injuries got to him, and I think that he lost some years of development because I believe he had an arm injury that kept him out for an entire season. So you just can't plan on every single one of these guys panning out. You just hope that you hang on to the right ones.
You mentioned Noah Juulsen, and we saw Noah Juulsen in the Vancouver lineup this week. He's played 50 some odd games for Vancouver, and there he is on the West's best team. Noah Juulsen, it took him a while to figure things out, and also you mentioned injuries. He had the couple of facial injuries. He had a mess of injuries when he was in Montreal. So just to reinforce your point that some of these players are going to be injured. William Trudeau was injured in Friday night's game. Some of these D players aren't going to make it, as you mentioned, and some of them are going to be used. Young defensemen are going to be packaged with some of the Canadiens draft picks to accelerate that rebuild. And I truly expect that we're going to see. I truly expect fireworks this summer, and not just the Montreal Fireworks Festival. I think that Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes are going to be very busy this summer, and they could be packaging up a Struble, a Harris, a Barron even, to accelerate things. You mentioned Dustin Byfuglien, and that's I think the best example or closest example to an Arber Xhekaj, a big guy who could handle himself, and a defenseman who played forward, both for Chicago and Winnipeg, but he was most effective playing forward when Chicago won the Cup. I have the Canadiens done this before. The only one I could think of was Mark Streit, and he was that was Guy Carbonneau moved him from defense to fourth line forward, and that didn't go well. And he wasn't at all the same kind of player as Arber Xhekaj. I'm on board with you. I think if you want a Xhekaj at forward, you've got one who plays a similar sort of game and has a goal-scoring touch, and that's Florian Xhekaj, and he might be in the lineup, at some point in his career. But I think the side point that Max is making is there are a lot of defensemen, and it's both exciting, but it also must be nerve-wracking, scary for not only a Harris, but a David Savard or a Mike Matheson or a Kovacevic that say, my goodness, what's training camp going to look like? And am I going to have a spot on defense in the fall?
I think to an extent, if you're Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton and you look at all these promising young defensemen, you might think that you are the luckiest guy in the world to have this problem. I think a lot of teams would love to have this amount of promising looking defensemen. The other thing too I wanted to point out is like guys like a Struble that have come in on this lineup and looked pretty good for the Montreal Canadiens. When the Montreal Canadiens are ready to compete, I think you also have to consider, are they going to want an upgrade on a guy like a Jaden Struble? Yeah. Is he going to be good enough for a good Montreal Canadiens team, or is he good enough for a rebuilding team? I think that's worth considering, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other part of it is the Montreal Canadiens are likely going to end up with a top 10 pick in the upcoming 2024 NHL draft. And that draft is loaded with defensive prospects. And I know that I got they were throwing eggs at me when I said that Reinbacher was top on the Canadiens list about a month before the draft. Remember the comments from that. Could the Canadiens take another defenseman at the 2024 draft to add to this mix? We'll find out. We'll find out soon.
Yeah, I hope they draft someone exciting. That's all I want this year.
Dynamic. Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah. Exactly. So once again, great question and comment coming in from Max in Gothenburg, Sweden. And we welcome all of your questions and comments at any time. Just make sure that you include your name and where you're from. That way we know who you're talking to, and you might get featured on a future Rocket Sports mailbag. So we appreciate, and big thanks to all of you. And if we didn't get to your question this time, hopefully we get to it at a later point. So now it's time for us to ask you guys a question, as our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, will David Reinbacher be in the Canadiens opening night lineup in October? So you got to hear about a lot of defensemen on these Montreal Canadiens, so you're going to want to think about this for a little bit. Let's take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Stay with us. This is Canadiens Connection here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 288 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm. Also, feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line. It's 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And here with me to bring you right to the end of the show in this third segment is my Rocket Sports colleague, Nathan. How's it going, Nathan?
Hey, Michael. I'm doing great.
Always something interesting happening with these Montreal Canadiens. I know we're winding down on the year, but we got the draft coming up and some Laval Rocket stuff to keep track of as well. So always something fun going on with these Montreal Canadiens. So if you want to keep up to date, here's what you need to know from Rocket Sports. We cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news, and you can find all the content at thn.com/Montreal. All the Canadiens coverage in one place. You'll find game day articles, feature articles, coverage on the Laval Rocket as well. And if you enjoy all that content and you're looking for some multimedia content, head over to our YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs and make sure that you hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, on there on Monday, you'll find the Canadiens Connection episode titled, last week's titled episode is Next Year's Montreal Canadiens Roster, Playoff Potential. Make sure to comment, subscribe, hit the like button so you don't miss any episodes.
We had a lot of great comments on that episode, so check out that comment section for sure. Lots of people sharing their opinions, so that's always very nice to see. And throughout the week, we put up a couple of other great shows on our YouTube channel, both of them hosted by the one and only Amy Johnson. On Tuesdays, you're going to find the Rocket Hockey Report. The latest episode is entitled David Reinbacher Begins a New Chapter with Laval. Obviously, David Reinbacher is joining the Laval Rocket this week, and Amy's got you covered with great insights and updates on how that's been going for him. So once again, hit that subscribe button, like the video if you like what you saw, and get into the comment section. I know we've had tons of great comments.
Yeah, I've had an opportunity to take a look at that episode, and it's very great content. You don't want to miss it. And every Thursday, we have our Habs Hockey Report entitled Biggest Stories of the NHL GM's Meeting. You want to make sure you subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment so we can definitely interact with you guys.
Yeah, Amy does a great job with both of those videos. The Rocket Hockey Report, of course, if you want to keep up with the Laval Rocket, and the Habs Hockey Report's your midweek update on the Montreal Canadiens. Plus, brand new this year, we've been doing live stream watch-alongs. The next one coming up as the Philadelphia Flyers take on the Montreal Canadiens is on Thursday, March the 28th. and I'll be joined there by my Rocket Sports Media colleague, Nathan. So in addition to all the other great content we do for you at Rocket Sports, these live stream watch-alongs on YouTube have been brand new to us this season.
Yes, and brand new this season, we've started doing these live stream watch-alongs for the Montreal Canadiens games.
So we've been doing these on YouTube's a couple times per month.
Yeah, so you look out for upcoming live streams, watch-alongs throughout the season.
And for those that have yet to join us, or maybe they've joined us before, how does this whole thing work?
Well, it's very easy to do. First, you want to tune into the game on one screen. You want to press mute and join our live stream on YouTube. For those watching our live stream on their TV, make sure to take out a laptop or your mobile device and join us there as well. So you can send comments and questions in our live chat. We will have a live play-by-play, scores, updates, analysis, and commentary, all while interacting with the viewers via the live chat. It's a perfect way to add an extra layer of entertainment to your hockey game night.
Yes, make sure you stick around at the end of the game for a post-game show that's entitled The Last Round, which we will provide a summary and highlight the important takeaways of the game. Plus, this is another opportunity for all of our viewers to send in their thoughts about the game in the live chat. Plus, during the game, we have 2 great intermission shows to engage all of our viewers.
Yeah, that is right. We have an intermission show entitled Nathan's Notes, where we break down the game and have a great topical discussions to keep everyone up to date.
So make sure you head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/allhabs, hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you never miss a single one of our live streams.
We look forward to watching the game with you. Make sure you subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss out.
And once again, that is coming up on March the 28th. The Montreal Canadiens taking on the Philadelphia Flyers, and we're looking forward to seeing you all there. And while you're on our YouTube channel and you're subscribing to all the content there, make sure you're also subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, The Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm. Coming out every single Saturday throughout the year. We don't take a vacation. We'll be there every single Saturday, even throughout the summer. So make sure that you tune in and never miss a single episode. Plus, if you enjoyed the show, we'd appreciate if you left us a 5-star review.
We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens.
And now it's time to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week.
Thank you, Michael. I am happy to hop in here with Rick for a moment to go through this section. You're right. It is time for the Canadiens Connection question of the week. I like this one this week. I like every week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, but this one, I think this is a good one. Will David Reinbacher be in the Canadiens opening night lineup in October? And I think all of you listening or watching, if you're watching this on YouTube, are going to have an opinion about that. And I think people were hopeful maybe a week ago, all season long, that, maybe he could. But I think after even just seeing one game from him in the AHL, we'll see how the rest of this week and next week go. But I think that he's going to come certainly ready to contend for a place in September.
And according to Mike Matheson, training camp in the fall is going to be wild. And I think he was talking about the number of defensemen that are going to be competing for spots, including David Reinbacher.
I think so too. So be sure to text us 585-3ROCKET. Leave us a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Just drop your answer down in the comments section or send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Habs Connection. Of course, we heard from lots of you after last week's podcast. The question of the week was, will the Canadiens ice a playoff caliber roster in 2024-25? We had some great answers all over the place because of that. I'm going to start with at Steve H. CDN 5629, who says a definite maybe on the playoffs next year. So,
all right.
So definitely unsure.
He's definitely on the fence.
That's right.
One person who isn't on the fence, and that's at A2ZME, also known as Bobby Montreal, in all caps, not even close.
I think that's a definitive not maybe.
Yeah.
Peter Pincinel, YL3IB, says not next year, but close the year after, which I think is pretty fair. I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm. from at Habinations. The playoffs wouldn't be in the best interest for the Habs. And we talked about that a little bit on episode 287. That if it has a number of effects, including the draft pick and maybe the Canadiens or Kent Hughes' willingness to move some veterans at the next trade deadline. Habinations goes on that he said, but I would like them to try to make the playoffs. It would help with the progression of the team. In my opinion, the team is quite shallow at the top 6, so an actual push wouldn't be in the cards. And that's including projecting Logan Mailloux making the team out of camp and Reinbacher playing less than 10 games in Laval.
Lots of contingencies there. I like that. And finally, we have a great answer from She26, which I'm just going to take a moment. I know you have read comments from her on the podcast in previous weeks, and I'm just going to take a second to say a thank you to everyone who leaves comments on our YouTube channel, including She26, who diligently watches every single one of our videos and always has great comments. So thank you to her. She says it would be absolutely awesome to see Xhekaj and Mailloux together, especially if they played like they did in Laval. If you remember, when Xhekaj was down with Laval, he was paired with Mailloux, and they were pretty formidable as a pairing.
And that was, she's speaking to the projected roster that we did last week on Canadiens Connection podcast episode 287. If you missed it, CanadiensConnection.fm or check your favorite podcast app.
That's right. She goes on to say no to Matheson. He needs to go. And if Ylönen ever got enough ice time, he'd be fine, but we know how that works. As far as playoff potential, I don't think so. So lots of she kind of covered all bases from that episode last week. Thank you for your comments. Some very good comments, astute observations, particularly about Ylönen. We've said that we've been pounding that theme for a long time, that he just does not get enough ice time or opportunities. And so thank you all. Don't forget, send us a message with your reply to this week's question of the week. Will David Reinbacher make the opening night roster next year?
And coming up this week, we've got a couple of Montreal Canadiens games. On the 24th, the Montreal Canadiens will be visiting the Seattle Kraken. That's a 9 p.m. start. Also, on the 26th, the Montreal Canadiens are visiting the Colorado Avalanche. That's another late night start at 9 p.m.
Yeah, and on March 28th, we have Philadelphia and Montreal playing, and we're going to have our live stream watch along again. Once again, you want to tune in to our next watch along.
Yep, youtube.com/allhabs. Tap that notification bell. That way you never miss a single one of our live streams. And that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, March the 30th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.